Hi, welcome back to another episode of Coldstream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. As you can see from the beginning of the video, we brought in the next project. And the next project is to resurrect an original 32 Roadster. So what we're starting with here, we've got the customer's frame, we've got an original firewall there, we have an original cowl sides, door, and a dash. Also what we have is a set of reproduction Brookfield frame rails, not Subrails, pardon me, Subrails assembly. So we're going to basically start by putting the frame down, setting it up on some small wheels that I can move it around in the shop. We're going to build the subrails, put the firewall on, and then work our way back. Now we do have a bunch of other parts over in the other garage. We introduced them quite some time ago. I have the back half of an original Roadster that's in pretty rough shape, but it's got a lot of the internal sheet metal pieces that we need. And along with that, we have a set of Brookfield Roadster rear quarters. So more than likely what'll happen, we'll have to see as we take all that stuff apart. We'll use the internals from the original 32 back half, and then probably the quarters, and then we'll see how it goes. So follow along, we're gonna start this up, and hopefully for this week anyways, we'll get the frame down, get the subrails made, and then start working on the cowl and the doors. I've nearly got the sub rails put together. Both sides are on right now. I've got them all assembled, all dressed up, the welds dressed, and then all the holes drilled, and then 1/2-inch bolts going into the frame all the way along right up to the back. Now, the other Brookvilles I was using 3/8 or maybe even 7/16. This particular frame is actually quite different, unique. Haven't seen one like this before. All of the it's aftermarket frame rails. I think they're American stamping frame rails on it, and everything is riveted. Front cross member is riveted on. The whole center cross member is all riveted together. If you look down inside the frame itself, you can see that the everything is all riveted. The inner boxing plates are set in. There's holes into them. Those are actually welded to the inside of the frame rail. Then in the back, we've got a Model A style rear cross member. The owner of this intends to run a Winters quick change rear end with 36 bells. I'm not sure what he's doing for brakes, but that's his plan. So I'm going to carry on with this. Going to weld those two center pieces on. I've just kind of mocked up the original firewall here. This has even got the original insulation on it behind. And that little tube you see sticking out there, right here, is actually a heater. I didn't know what it was, but I don't know if I can do this or not, but it slides up and down. It does slide up and down. I just don't want to knock it over. And then on the outside over here, this little port opens up, so I guess heat would come from the exhaust manifold. And if I'm not mistaken, this is a 4-cylinder firewall. Not 100% sure. Somebody may correct me, or I'll figure it out before the end of the video. So anyways, I'm going to keep working on this. I'll get those two cross pieces welded in place. Took a little more time than I remember, but it's all in there. Everything's all good. I'll bolt down the firewall, and then what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start cleaning the cowl up. And then over here, I've got the two cowl sides. They're relatively good shape. The bottom pieces are missing, but like a lot of light surface rust on everything. So I'll carry on with those. We'll see how far we can get with this video. And oh, there's the two doors over by the wall here. So those are the bits and pieces that are going to make up the original 32 Roadster. So follow along as we keep making progress on it. So the last thing I had to do on the sub rails was actually take them off the frame. Flipped them upside down. I had the clamps all on the two cross pieces here and here. And then what still has to be done, like the originals, what they would have done is they either would have welded or riveted through these two holes here. So what I typically do is just weld through the holes, put a couple little weld spots here and here and there, and then basically got my grinder out and just kind of ground off any little rust spots or any high points or whatever that the subframe would sit up on. So, and then I cleaned the holes out a little bit more just to make sure that there's no burrs or anything when it goes back on the frame. So I am going to take the subframe, put it back on the frame here, and then we'll carry on to the next step. I decided to tackle putting the rear floor in next. I've built these Roadsters before both ways, putting the floor in after I built the body, like I kind of did on our Roadster, which is all full of dust there right now. But I've also put the floor in before I started to put the quarter panels and everything on. The one advantage of doing that is I can actually clamp the floor down to the subframe a little easier. So I prefer to put the floor in. Now, with this particular frame, since we've got this great big Model A, Model T style rear cross member that'll allow him to use a transverse leaf spring with a quick change rear end, it sticks up through the floor. So I didn't want to screw up, so I kind of put the floor on, kind of measured the hole. It's actually now cut the size, but as you can see here,
Must have cut it about 6 or 7 times. Basically made my hole the size I wanted from underneath. Cut it undersized and then just kept on trimming until I've got a good fit here. So the next step is what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a scribe. I'm going to run it down along the edge all the way around. And then every 6 inches or so, I'm going to drill, I think it's a 3/8 hole, between 1/4 and 3/8 of an inch diameter hole. So what I'll then do is clamp the floor down to the subframe and actually weld through the hole to make it look like a rivet. So that's up next. Going to carry on putting the floor on here and hopefully I'll show you a finished product here in a few seconds. And there's the floor all welded in. The floor was actually stored in a plastic bag, so I had a little bit of surface rust onto it. So basically just took this fine buffing wheel here and went over the whole thing, and then took a wire wheel and went into all the grooves to take out the light surface rust off. Just wanted to get everything off before it gets any worse. The garage is heated here, so probably for the whole time that's going to take me to build this, and by the time we either put it in epoxy primer or send it for epoxy primer, there won't be any more rust build up and stuff. There, I don't know if you can see it or not, there's my welds. So basically I used a 5/16 hole is what I drilled. That's about the right size. 1/4 inch is a little small for building and getting a good attachment to the metal underneath. I just clamped it with some of these bar clamps here down to the subframe, and then just did a little circle weld on them. Now the last 2 holes here are not going to get welded. The reason is the Subrail extensions, which I've got one just laying in here right now. That'll be put on later on when I put the quarter panels on, because I want to get a nice fit. I don't want to have these too far this way or too far that way. So when I get the quarters on and the rear section in, that whole back assembly stuff, if you've watched any of my other videos of doing the 5-window coupes or the roadsters, I kind of all do that at the same time I square everything up. So right now that's as far as we're going to go with the actual floor. So this is going to go back up on the shelf up there. And then I think next up I'm going to chase the holes in the frame there, because it's they're threaded, but I'll just chase them with a 3/8 tap, and then we'll put the firewall on, which will prep us for starting working on the cowl over here and the cowl sides. Like I said, more than likely we're going to sandblast them or send them out for sandblasting, get all the rust off of them, and then kind of work on the some of the metal work before we actually put it over here on the frame. So we'll see how far we get with this video. So just continue to follow along with us. Thanks.
So as you can see from the time-lapse video, there's quite a bit of it. What I did with the cowl pieces was I started off with the, this is a Eastwood type of sander with an abradable kind of rotary disc onto it. We've used them before. I used it outside because they kick up a wicked amount of dust. So basically, I knew that I couldn't use this to bring it down to bare metal, but I used it to take the scale off the top. And then what I did was I lightly sandblasted the outside of it. So on the top, on the sides, you can still see there's a kind of a little bit of dark spots. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to go over it with the mini grinder and a flapper wheel like I did across the top of this, and just kind of get that last little tiny bit of it. I'm always really cautious with the sandblaster. I've seen people sandblast old sheet metal and warp it all to pieces. So I guess I go a little bit on the light side and then try and make it up for it with, you know, I have to grind some of it anyways. So, but what happens is when I go over it with the mini grinder and the flapper disc, actually you can find some of the high spots and stuff on the cowl. There's high spots and low spots. There's lots of dents, so gonna have to be doing some. I've flattened some of it out. You saw that with the hammer too, but I'll have to shrink some of these stretched out dents in a future episode. So for now, basically, what I've done, I've kind of put the cowl together, just sort of fit it and made sure it would fit on the firewall, that the A-pillars would line up where they should on the subframe, and they do more or less. One good thing is that whoever took this off somewhere in it's from South Africa, by the way, if I didn't mention that. I think I mentioned it before, but this cowl and those two doors came from South Africa, made their way somewhere to Texas. The gentleman I know that got this, he picked it up from somebody in Texas, brought it back to Canada and shipped it here on the East Coast for me to play with. So the metal actually is very, very good. This is a far cry from the pitting that I saw when I worked on the 5-window coupe before. It's actually really good metal. I mean, there's some spots, as you see on the bottom over there. We have some patch panels. I don't have to make them, and they actually look to be pretty good. The plan is to use the minimum amount of this metal and use as much of the original metal as we can, because I know on the back half we're going to be using a lot of reproduction metal. The other thing I did, the cowl vent mechanism here, I freed that up. That was just with a little bit of heat and some wax. So I mean, that's pretty much it for this episode. This cowl is not on to stay. The next episode, I'll be taking this off, doing some metal work, working on getting it more permanently attached possibly to the subframe, and then work on the doors. But that's it for this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed. This is episode 1 of the original 32 Ford Roadster, or International Roadster as we've been calling it. So please like, share, tag, and subscribe. Send me your comments and questions. I'd love to hear from you. Everybody take care and have a great week.